Now, the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show continues on Charleston's Big Talker, 1250 WTMA.
Welcome back, folks, as the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show continues here on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA and WTMA.com. I'm, of course, your host, Brian Beatty. Thanks again for joining me this morning as we talk about the housing market. And we just left talking about seller financing. Well, really, we first started talking about the fact that, in Charleston, let's say that you're making, $75,000 a year. It means you can afford about a $300,000 house. If you look at what's available, it's a little on the depressing side. There's not much available. More than half of the inventory needs serious renovations. And so, we need to, as real estate agents, we always need to be looking for solutions, right? Well, first of all, it means that we need to understand the problems and the opportunities, right? So the challenge, of course, is that there's just not a lot available to purchase, so that when something does hit the market, it's still getting swarmed by buyers that are ready, willing, and able. There are even more buyers out there, a very large pool of them, that are interested in buying but are not, quote unquote, mortgage ready in the eyes of a traditional lending institution. We also have a lot of sellers that don't necessarily want to sell their property and take a big hit on capital gains. Like, let's say that they've got a rental or just a second home. Maybe it's a piece of land, and they just don't want to, take on the tax consequence. Maybe it's your primary residence and you just haven't lived there for 2 years. So there's a few different ways to, I think, insert some buyers into the market and some inventory into the market. And one way of doing that is seller financing. So I want to talk a little bit about the opportunities here for both buyers and sellers. So let's say that you're a buyer and you want to approach a seller with an offer that includes seller financing. Maybe the seller's home has been on the market for a while. It isn't showing well. It's overpriced. Whatever the case might be, it's not selling, right? So there's a 3-part acronym that I want you to remember here, and it's called PIT. So the P stands for price. When you open up your property to a different pool of buyers looking for seller financing, you as the seller can typically command a bit of a higher price because you're being more flexible on terms. We tend to focus a lot on the purchase price or the sales price, when in reality, most buyers are really focused on payment. How much is it going to cost them every month to buy that house? Or at least that's, I think, what they should be thinking. Now, some might say, well, hey, just because you inflate the price because you're giving better terms, it doesn't matter. You still have to have the house appraised. Well, no. You are the bank. You don't have to get an appraisal. You don't need to order one. So that contingency is out the door. Now, the buyer might still want to get an appraisal to make sure that they're not overpaying for the property. But you as the seller, that's the great thing about real estate contracts, right, is that everything's negotiable. And you can put darn near anything in writing so long as both parties agree to it. So in this instance, for seller financing, I would not encourage you to agree to an appraisal. If you're a seller, as a buyer, that would likely make sense. But we've got to figure out a way to create a win-win scenario here, right? So the win for the seller is maybe selling it for a little bit more than they could through traditional means. And you get to purchase a property without having to go through a traditional lending institution, and maybe even get a better interest rate in return for paying slightly more money for the house. So the scales balance a little bit. The I stands for income. So, instead of just selling the property and cashing out and putting the money in the bank, earning 0% interest, you're now turning your home into an income stream. And it's not the same kind of income, by the way, as you owning a rental property and getting rental income, right? Because with a rental, you have the taxes, the insurance, the maintenance, the landscaping, the property manager, the this, that, and the other. When you're the lender and the buyer's paying you, that is net income. That is clean income. Now, the T stands for taxes. And this is, where I need to insert the caveat that, if you're going to go through with something like this, talk with your accountant, talk with an attorney, so on and so forth. But the T stands for taxes in our PIT acronym. So when you sell your property, you pay taxes on the gain in the year that you realized that gain. So let's say you sell a property for $300,000 that you didn't have a mortgage on, but you give the buyer a loan of $250,000, right? You give them a $250,000 mortgage. Well, you didn't realize that entire gain. So you get to spread it out over the term of the loan. So there's some real advantages to doing this. Now, there are a few misconceptions, I think, when it comes to seller financing, and we should address those. The first, because I know a lot of agents listen to this program as well. The first, agents, look, you're still going to get paid, right? You're going to get a commission because it's going to come out of the buyer's down payment. When you're structuring a seller financing deal, regardless of whether an agent is included or not, by the way, you as the seller need enough of a down payment to protect yourself in the event that buyer decides to not pay you anymore. Because hiring a foreclosure attorney is not cheap. I've had to do it before. I mean, I think I've mentioned multiple times on this program that I'm a private money lender. So I have investors really from all over the East Coast that come to me and they just seek cash for an investment property purchase or a renovation. Well, they've got to put up collateral in order for me to give them the cash to do those renovations or to make those acquisitions. And so I need enough collateral so that in the event they don't pay me and I have to foreclose on a property, that I've had enough of that risk covered through something like points, which in term, it's like a down payment. And then enough coverage to make sure that if I have to go and I have to sell that property at auction, I'm going to go and get my money back, right? So agents, don't worry, you'll get your commission so long as the down payment is enough to pay commissions, closing costs, and put enough money in the seller's pocket to cover for a rainy day, right? The second is that your home has to be paid off, which is not necessarily true. You can still do a seller financing deal subject to the existing mortgage. What they do is they simply record the mortgage as a junior lien in second position, and then they wrap it around the existing mortgage. And we'll get to a little bit more on that in just a minute. But the third misconception is that you as a seller you're going to be stuck with this house and this mortgage for another 30 years, which is not the case at all. You can amortize the payments over 30 years, just like a buyer would if they were getting a traditional mortgage. But you can set that balloon to, a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, whatever the case is, whatever you guys agree upon, which just says like, hey, you'll pay me monthly payments as if you just got a 30-year mortgage. But in 2 years' time, you have to refinance and I have to get all my money back, right? You have to pay off my loan. Go get another loan, pay me cash, whatever you need to do. It doesn't matter. In 2 years, I want to be out from holding this mortgage for you. Now, sometimes the buyers can't do that, right? Well, then you can restructure that mortgage with maybe some more favorable terms for you as the seller who's now the lender. So, I mean, I think the bottom line here is that there are a lot of folks that are sitting on cash in the form of a down payment, and they're just not necessarily qualified for a traditional mortgage. Or maybe they can get a mortgage, but the interest rate and the overall payment it's not attractive enough for them to buy something right now. Maybe they are living with some friends. Maybe they're house hacking. Who knows? But what I do know is that there are a significant amount of buyers out there that want to buy but have credit-related issues. We have conversations with folks on a daily basis. And remember, I've got a pretty large real estate team, and so we call about 1,500 people a day, believe it or not. And so naturally, we're going to come across folks that would like to be homeowners, but the bank has said that they cannot get a mortgage right now. Well, maybe that's something that you as a seller might be willing to look past, a lower credit score if they provide you with more of a down payment. Or maybe you can make that up in the form of a slightly better interest rate than what they might get if they had traditional financing. So there are some risks to this, mostly stemming from the risk that the buyer won't pay the mortgage, right? Make payments to you. Since you as the seller are still responsible for the first mortgage in the event that you do this while still having a mortgage, you need to be prepared to step up and make those original loan payments. Now, if that buyer decides to default, you would be in the junior position from a recording perspective, which means that if there's still a first mortgage on the property, that first mortgage is going to get paid off first before you have a chance to get proceeds, in the event of a sale at auction. And so I think the other risk, of course, is potentially triggering the due on sale clause or the acceleration clause of your current mortgage. Nearly all mortgages have a due on sale clause, which states that if the property changes hands, the loan is called due in full. Now, that being said, if the buyer's making payments to you and you're making payments to your original lender, bank just wants their money. They're not necessarily concerned about the property changing hands. But this is where things can get a little sticky, a little risky. You really need to understand what you're getting yourself into if you're going to try and attempt to do this with an existing mortgage in place. It's possible. It can be done. If you're trepidatious about it, then I think that this is an overwhelmingly attractive idea for somebody that is maybe sitting on some land or a rental property that's not quite performing the way they want it to, and they've got some equity in it. You don't have to take that big capital gain right now. You can spread that out. You can give the buyer a mortgage back, and you can turn your property into an income stream. And again, when we're looking at that income, we have to look at that income as net income compared to the net income that you would earn if you went out and, let's say, acquired another investment property for the same purchase price that you would sell it to the buyer for. So if you want to learn more about this, this, alternative financing, creative financing, doing more than just traditional real estate brokerage, this is where things get really fun. But, a lot of agents in this market and across the country are frankly just general practitioners of real estate. You want to go buy a house? They can help you do that. You want to sell a house? They can help you do that. But it's going to be through traditional means and probably through traditional skill sets and approaches. So if you're looking for somebody that really understands this process, really understands the options that are available, as a seller and even as an agent, you don't know what you don't know. But when I can provide options that make sense to both parties and it helps both parties accomplish the goal and maybe puts more money in your pocket, job well done, right? So I'd love the opportunity to earn your business and talk more about these types of things with you. And then, of course, we can talk more about the incentives that we're running, like 25% off our most popular listing plan for the month of May. Or if you sell and buy a home locally, we'll pay your moving expenses. Or there's all kinds of different things that we have. It just depends on your situation to see what makes most sense. To learn more about that, though, give me a call. Or you can text me, 843-800-0065. That's 843-800-0065. Or you can check us out online at listingsincharleston.com. That's listingsincharleston.com. Stick around, folks, for more of the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show right here on the Big Talker 1250 and WTMA.com.
Hear the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show every Saturday morning at 9 and each Sunday morning at 10 on 1250 WTMA and WTMA.com.